Yo, 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 welcome into Attacking Third. Whether you're joining us live as a pod on USWNT or listening as a pod, thank you and welcome in. I'm your girl, Darian Jenkins, joined by NWSL legend, UCLA alum, and U.S. Women's National Team alum, and dear friend, McCall Zerboni. McCall, how you feeling today?
I'm feeling great. Coming off 2 victories on the red, white, and blue leading up into our Independence Day. I feel like this is so on brand.
Yep, very on. I forgot 4th of July was this week. That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for the reminder. We're going to be breaking down the match day 2 of U.S. Women's National Team versus Ireland. And we're also going to preview the U.S. versus Canada. Huge matchup in our second segment. But for now, let's go through the starting lineup of today's match. Now, it's Emma Hayes. So, of course, it's going to be completely different. Could have anyone predicted that it was going to be 11 changes. You heard that right. The entire lineup was changed from the first match. Let's pull that up. We're going to go start in the back with Mandy McGlynn starting in goal, Emily Sams, Jordyn Bugg, Tara McKeown, and Izzy Rodriguez getting her first cap in the back. In the midfield, we had Corey Bethune, Sam Meza, and Olivia Moultrie. And up front, Emma Sears, Yazmeen Ryan, and Lynn Biyendolo rocking the captain's armband, which we love to see. McCall, first time for Lynn wearing the captain's armband. You've been a teammate of hers for a long time. I got to play with her for 2 seasons. My heart was so proud. I feel like she's had the craziest journey to get to
the craziest journey, and she's a leader. So it's not a shock to me. And I'm actually surprised that it took this long for her to be able to wear the captain's band. Of course, it's a very star-studded roster with a lot of experience and leadership. But Lynn exercises that day in and day out in the locker room, out of the locker room. She's such a good person to look after her teammates in their development on the pitch, but also the human being that they are. So to me, that's a leader. And I'm just so happy that she got to be recognized in that view today.
I know. I am too. It made my heart really happy for her. It's been a long time coming. And as poetic as it is, she gets the go-ahead goal in the 11th minute in this match. A really beautiful ball whipped in from Emma Sears. Poor marking by Ireland, which we can break down Ireland later. But beautiful goal by Lynn Biyendolo. It's in the air. She settles it down. She keeps it under the crossbar. It's a volley into the back of the net. Very vintage Lynn Biyendolo, in my opinion. But I absolutely loved this goal. I think what we talked about last game a lot was the lack of service. I mean, the disconnect of service to the runs. And I think Ireland were much more open this match. So it cleared a lot of space. But again, I think Emma Sears, this was a really good ball. But up until this, there wasn't another goal until the 42nd minute, which we'll get to. But McCall, what were your thoughts the opening minutes to, let's say, the 40th minute of this match? What were you thinking? Because we were texting in our chat about how we were feeling, how this game was going.
Rough start, slow start. You can tell there were some people up there that were just starting to get their feet wet and felt a little uncomfortable when that initial whistle blew. I mean, there were 7 players that didn't even play last match that were starting in this match today. So that kind of says a lot that, they have nerves, or, they're a little bit rusty because they haven't played in a game and this is their first US game or first appearance, and playing next to a bunch of players that they've never played with before. So you can tell that they lacked cohesion and understanding amongst each other today, which made their ball speed suffer, their tempo and their build out and playing the ball around the back and building forward really lacked. It was a slow start in first half for the US today.
I agree. It literally felt like an opening, one of the first games of the season of an NWSL game is how it felt. It seemed like new franchise comes in. These players haven't played in an official game together yet. And there's not a lot of chemistry. There's not a lot of learned tendencies between each other and a lot of nerves. I think they settled maybe once Lynn got the goal a little bit more. And then when we have to talk about Izzy Rodriguez getting on the score sheet. First of all, I feel like she's one of those players that just has the heart of the NWSL. We've heard, you and I have both heard Lo talk about what a great teammate she is. She didn't get much joy on the ball most of this game. The U.S. primarily went down the right, but the fact that she was in a prime position, off of the rebound, off of a Sears shot, and was there, kept it low, another volley into the back of the net, first cap, first goal. I mean, it had to feel good for her.
No doubt about it. I mean, even just to find an outside back in the box is for me, always really rewarding to see that they have that bite and that desire to get forward, and the timing of it too, right? Don't just run in there to run and waste your energy, because you have to get back defensively as well. But for her to read the game and knew that it was kind of pinballing around the box and said, I can get me some right here. Let's get in there. And she's in the right place, the right time, and struck it cleanly. Honestly, some people would rocket that over or miss strike it. And she found the center of the ball, went right through it and finished it. So good for her. First start, first goal. It's the first in 2025, the first for many people.
all under the Hayes era. I absolutely love it. Then going into halftime, no changes made. Yazmeen Ryan, though, gets on the score sheet. Your former teammate, good friend of both of ours. I love this for Yaz because I feel this was one of the games where we finally saw her play her confident self, where maybe she wasn't overthinking. She decided to shoot her shot. She was opening up into pockets, going on the dribble, which I know, McCall, you've touched on a lot, that we need more people to dribble out of the midfield so that it breaks things up. It's not so predictable. And I just thought this was such a good goal. And you could just, didn't you feel like you could see her looking like OG Yaz from last year?
You could see how much it means to her on her face in that photo. It's like elation, but also relief, like when you're a striker and you go through a drought, it's like this huge bear is on your back that you're trying to tackle down to score another goal. And so, especially for her having a slow start at Houston this year. So she just scored her first goal for Houston this last month. Now she's scoring her first goal for US. So we can start to see her come alive. And when she does, she's a super valuable player for our nation. So if we can get her ticking and going on all cylinders again, I'd love to see Yazmeen Ryan come alive and keep being a mainstay, getting called into these camps.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think she's one of those players too that the game was so monotonous in a way. The ball moved really slow. It seemed like everybody was kind of uncomfortable trying to make a decisive pass or a decisive dribble. And I think as the game settled into the second half, Yazmeen Ryan, Emma Sears were two of the players that made it clear. Tara McKeown too made it clear that they were going to be the driving force. Bunch of subs were made. We saw Alyssa Thompson come in. Rose Lavelle came in at her hometown Cincinnati. Ali Setnor, Claire Hutton. But it's Alyssa Thompson who, again, McCall, did that blow your mind that it was only her second goal last match for the US?
I was surprised to hear that, yes. But then again, don't let that girl get going and break open and start going goals. I mean, she was only on the pitch for 10 minutes and scored a goal.
Scored another one.
If she's just going to be our goal scoring weapon, sure, love it.
Yeah, I'm here for it. But I was shocked to hear that stat. That can't be right, but apparently it is. But she's been incredibly effective. So the girl's just heating up. I can't wait to see her in the next match against Canada. But before we get to that, what was your biggest takeaway with this second match against Ireland? Totally new lineup, different pace of play, not much chemistry. But what was your biggest takeaway from what Emma Hayes put out tonight?
Well, in a way, they were identical matches. We're up 2-0 at halftime in both matches and finished 4-0 in both matches. So, looking at the score line, you would think that they were similar games. But for me, we dropped a level a little bit this match. We didn't look our sharp selves. We're really slow in our decision-making, our tempo on the ball. And I think a lot of it could have been, playing a 3-5-2. When you play three in the back, the distance of passing is longer, farther away. So that will naturally slow the tempo unless you're punching that ball in there and putting ball speed on it. The greater the length of the distance of the pass, the slower it can be unless you're really moving it quickly. And then having five in the midfield across that line, playing against a low block or a mid block can actually bring more crowdedness, less space, because there's so many bodies in that midfield to break through those lines. So I think playing a 3-5-2 was a little bit tricky for this, new, young, inexperienced roster. And then also just, unfamiliarity with each other and, starting really slow. It was apparent that, but look, we basically have three teams. Like if you think about, we didn't call any of our Euro players in. There's a lot of players that are very, very good that are still missing, not even in camp, not even playing these friendlies. We have three very, very strong, solid teams. I don't think any other nation in the world could say that.
That is what I was thinking, even looking at the Euros, which are about to start, and thinking of, okay, the US is number one ranked in the world right now. This isn't even our starting lineup, and beating Ireland the same score as probably our second best competing 11 to what the original starting 11 was, but just thinking back to the Olympics, it's scary. Like the Hayes experiment has really come to fruition and you're seeing it. And I know that this is the first camp for a lot of these players, their first cap, their first time playing with each other, even training with each other. It's only going to get better, but it was a lot of nerves. But I'm looking forward to seeing how this team builds on that chemistry. And I think it was really apparent because last match, you, Jess, and I were all on the post-match show together. And we talked, wow, look at the chemistry building, the relationships between Avery Patterson and Cooper, and that we really saw those finally build. The midfield looked solid. And I think it felt so drastically different just because we had such a high from that.
Yeah, and they looked a little disconnected today, and that's going to happen with new places and new faces out there in different places on the pitch. But yeah, that lack of understanding and working in units wasn't there today, but they still got the job done. So
yeah, that's all that matters. Goals are goals. Looking at the roster though, and after the 90 minutes wrapped, who was a big standout for you today that maybe in the match against Canada, you're thinking made a good case for themselves to potentially be a starter?
I'm going hype squad for Lynn Biyendolo right now. I can't say enough. Not only what she did on the pitch, but just what she's done in her career to honor the crest. It has not been easy for her. She's been left off her roster, out of major tournaments, injured. She always does what's right for our nation, for the team. She's team centric. And she's had to fight through a lot, and to see her with that captain's band on and not change, just go out there and do what she always does and still making time for others to direct and lead them on the field, but also checking her locker and getting a goal for herself. And she made that goal. The entry ball, she laid it off first time wide, spun, got herself in the box and finished that out of the air. She made that happen and set a good tempo for the squad. Getting a goal that helped them relax a little bit more, because she was definitely looking around, I'm sure, like, man, there's a lot of nerves out here. I need to figure out a way to settle these girls.
No, Lynn was my player too, where I'm like, oh, you absolutely made the case to be a starter against Canada, which I'm thinking that's why she was one of the first subs out, to rest her legs. Yeah, I'm hoping so. I think there will be a little bit of an adjustment. I think maybe it'll be Cooper that comes out, Sentnor go wide, or vice versa. One of them's going to play the 9, depending on how Hayes looks to break down Canada. But to me, Lynn getting the captain's armband, and then you're right, the way she set the tempo, the work rate, when it was so slow and stagnant on the ball at times, and not enough punchiness, not enough get in your face recovery, defensive, like, let's just go foul somebody. Let's at least make Ireland not get into the game, because the slower the game got, the more Ireland, I mean, they weren't threatening, but had opportunities to go forward. And I think Lynn one of the best defensive forwards in the world. The way that she works, I think, set the tempo for everybody else, and especially getting the goal.
Definitely friendly vibes today, but it looked like a friendly, but Lynn, no, she's always chasing you down, always putting heat on you. She has that tenacity and that work rate that she'll bring no matter what.
Yeah. Well, we had a couple debuts tonight. First, Izzy Rodriguez, Sam Meza, and Jordyn Bugg got her first start. Let's just go through those. Izzy Rodriguez, I wish we got to see more of her on the ball, but I love that she got a goal. But what did you make of her performance tonight?
I was impressed with her crossing as well. She put some good balls into the box that could have been great opportunities. I agree. I don't think we had a lot of opportunity to see what she can do, but she looked like she fit out there. I mean, it wasn't like a standout, but she also didn't look like she didn't belong. And, we said her name several times throughout the game. So that's always a good thing too. And I think it's a good start for her. But she's going to need more time with the team.
Yeah, needs more time. And I think the relationship, you were right in that 3-back being one of those wing backs, and building the relationship with the center back next to you is going to get her more involved in the game. Sam Meza in the midfield, though, our resident midfielder here, McCall.
She was buzzing around in there, making herself available. She wanted the ball. She was pretty tidy in possession. She didn't lose it much. I question her effectiveness, though. You can make a lot of passes, but are you actually breaking lines? Are you making final balls? Didn't see a lot of that from her, but when she was keeping the ball, it was in a circular pattern, but not necessarily a north pattern that would really put a lot of pressure on a back line.
I love when I just agree with you because I'm like, yes, I'm on the right track. That's exactly what I thought, because you can come into camp, in my opinion, and be a player that plays very safe, just get your touches, just gets used to it. Or do you want to come in and be like, this is why I'm here. Boom. I make these passes when I play for Seattle. I do this when I'm in with my club team. I dribble to break lines. I don't think we got to see that. And I think it's just because of nerves.
Yeah, that risk taking only comes when you're comfortable, right? And I think, it's hard to be a tough critic on her for her first appearance. You're just kind of, again, getting comfortable and familiar. And I think we may see that layer come into her game later, but it wasn't there today.
Yeah, it reminds me of the quote Emma Hayes has said, where it's not right now, it's later. Nobody's written off, and not to say Sam Meza is written off at all, but I think we'll get that from her later. I think this was just like, go get your feet wet, and then we're gonna mold and work on things. So I absolutely love seeing her. And Jordyn Bugg, shout out, getting her first start. Not really challenged today, but hey, you got 90.
But I appreciate that Emma Hayes thinks of everything. Like, our spine today was the rain. So Seattle Reign, our spine was Jordyn Bugg, Sam Meza, and Lynn Biyendolo. So she knows where to tinker to put new people with people that they actually feel comfortable with. You know what I mean? So it was really cool to see Emma's thinking in that way, that I'm going to put some new people out there. I'm going to put them in a spine with people that they're comfortable with, that they train week in and week out with at their club team. And hopefully that will elevate their performance today. So it's just so neat to see like all these players from the NWSL get these opportunities and come out here and show what they can do on the international stage, and, state their case, make their claim that we need them. And there's someone that needs to continue to be in this system.
Yeah. And you're always going to be in that pool now. You can always say, I've been called into a national team. I'm one of the players on that list.
You have a cap. There's a lot of people who cannot say that.
Yeah.
No cap.
I know.
Cap.
I'm like, run it back. Let me go back and back in my day. But let's talk about the spine of the next game. Guys, we're going to take a quick break. And then when we come back, we're going to be talking Canada versus the US, give you a little preview of our thoughts on that match. Stay with us. Welcome back to Attacking Third, everybody. Darian Jenkins, joined by McCall Zerboni. All right, Call, we are going to break down our preview of Canada versus the U.S. Women's National Team. They play this week, and Canada has a really strong team. It's been competitive. The last couple of times the U.S. has played Canada, if you remember, W Gold Cup, it was basically like they were swimming. The ball wasn't moving. 2-2 draw, goes to penalties. Crazy. Yeah, absolutely insanity. And then also in the She Believes Cup final, also ended 2-2, went to penalties with the U.S. coming out on top. U.S. and Canada have been intertwined for a really long time. A lot of the players play in the U.S., a lot of them now going to play in the Northern Super League. It's a very intertwined national teams, and I'm really looking forward to this match. But Canada had a little bit of a fiasco with DroneGate. But to me, I think the women have handled it incredibly well. And I actually think we've seen sort of an evolution of this team. Casey Stoney is now the head coach. You guys don't remember, former player, absolute legend on the pitch, went to coach San Diego, debut season, did incredibly well with them. Was let go, but then picked up by Canada. They're very lucky to have her. And it's just been a big change. Sinclair has retired. There's change of the guard. But how threatening is this Canadian women's national team, McCall?
Canada has been like our long-standing sister nation, but the sister that you compete against with on everything. We're just like our neighbors are there, our sisters, but like,
you're not going to beat me.
No, you're not going to beat me. And, we have historically always had the upper hand on that match. And I think that they're always trying to chase us, and we're that barometer of, where they need to be. But, like over half their players play in our league, and, we're very familiar with them, which is helpful in the scout going into the game.
Yeah.
But, they're still bouncing back from a really gnarly thing to happen to them. I mean, their coaching staff, unbeknownst to the players, were spying on other teams during the World Cup, and they got I feel bad for Sink. Think about Sinclair. That was her last ever World
For
Cup that she
last year.
ever
Yeah.
play in. And then they basically got evicted from the tournament because of things that the coaches were doing, trying to cheat and I understand that that could leak into the locker room. That can make you feel some type of way about your federation. It can give really icky vibes that you have to bounce back from. So these friendlies, I think, are very important for Canada to put their best foot forward and start getting a more positive mentality about their federation and just changing the narrative moving forward. So I think they're going to come out strong in this game against the U.S. because this is a chance for them to put a staple on it.
I agree. I think the whole drone gate fiasco was really tough, but we covered it a lot in studio on Attacking Third when this happened. And I thought the way that the players Olympics drone scandal. I think that the way that the players handled it was so impressive. They just said, you know what? It's us against everybody. Sure, we're docked points, still made it out of their group. They were absolutely threatening. I thought that they played some of the best football we've seen Canada play in a really long time. Usually they played suffer ball, and it looked like they were actually building and getting the best out of the players that they had.
Tough at the Olympics. Yeah, their Olympic
really
group
tough.
Was kind of tough. So I thought they did a good job, and I think they're still trying to build on that. And I do feel bad for them in a way because they are always second best to the U.S. and then something like that happens. But Casey Stoney is a brilliant coach. We've been able to see her at the Wave and everything there, and what she's done overseas as well. So I'm excited because she's really going to flip the script for them.
No, I completely agree. Some of the players on Canada that I'm looking out for that I think could be really lethal against the U.S. Women's National Team is Vanessa Gill, for one. I played with her in Bordeaux. I think she is a stellar center back. She's a big tackler. Her distribution is incredible. How lethal she is on set pieces, to me, is getting up there with Wendy Renard, who she played with at Lyon for a long time. Like, if it's not Wendy, it's Vanessa. And that's something that I'm actually really looking forward to this game because I think it's going to be the biggest test the U.S. has needed for some time.
I'm glad you're highlighting her because the difference between Ireland's backline and Canada's backline is going to be heads and tails more competitive. Goals that we've been scoring, these last 8 goals that we've scored would not pop off as easily against Canada. So we're really going to have to refine ourselves in the final third. Quicker decision making. Like, there was some times today that we had an open window to shoot, but we took an extra touch or we're just slow in our decision making. That will get super closed down by Canada because they're just better in the back and have more experience. So it's going to be
not afraid to be physical.
It's going to be hard to score goals against them for sure.
Yeah. I think the biggest difference, like when I'm looking at the U.S. front line going against the Canadian back line, whatever that may be, they have some really big standout players that played in the NWSL, some in the Northern Super League, a lot in Europe, is that it's going to be physical.
Yep.
U.S. isn't going to have the freedom to run around just as much and take time on the ball because you're going to have to respect defensively what Canada is going to do and how they're going to build out of the back. I don't think the U.S. had to fully be worried about what Ireland was going to do building. But just your experience, because you were with the U.S. Women's National Team, when you play a team like Ireland where the level's much lower, then you jump into playing a team like a Canada who's up there in the FIFA World Rankings. How do you get used to that big jump going into the next match?
Well, so how do you think Emma's going to approach this? Do you think she's going to put her best lineup out there against Canada?
I think so. I think we're going to see a mix of both. I think maybe the only change would be Lynn Biyendolo into the starting 11. I think maybe Cooper would come out because that's such a different, that leadership I think is needed against a team like Canada. And Lynn brought it today.
Totally. I'm excited about that to see who she puts out there because I think it will be an indication of who she thinks her strongest 11 are at this moment. But when you are a player and you're going into that, you know that there's going to be a jump in talent and competition, and you're meant to approach every game the same way. Your mentality, your approach, your preparation, all those things. But you're obviously studying your opponent and they play differently. And so you're going to have to add new elements and layers to your game because maybe what you did against Ireland isn't going to work against Canada, whether it be their formation, whether it be the talent they have in certain positions and pieces. And so you've really got to do a lot of mental preparation of think that, what kind of game do you want to have against a particular opponent?
Well, when you're talking about she's got to throw out her best 11, who do you think made a case to be in that best 11 from the first 2 matches?
Well, I agree with you, Biyendolo.
Mm-hmm.
Sam Coffee. You can see as soon as they came into the match, like the tempo
Electric.
increased. It was like they lit everybody else on fire around them as well. Like, okay, ladies, like let's step it up now, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for me, it's Gurma, Coffee, Lynn in that spine. And then Alyssa Thompson for sure.
Yeah.
I love Michelle Cooper. I think she is better at crossing than Emma Sears right now. She can really pick somebody out. She doesn't waste as many possessions when we're in that final third because it always connects with a player. So I'd love to see her there. And then, you know, the rest is up to Emma, but those are the 4 or 5 I would say that are standouts that I want to see go again. And obviously if Rose is able to start again, I think she's our best 10 right now.
I agree. I was going to say Rose Lavelle. The other player I'll add is Avery Patterson. I think she made such a clear case for herself in the first match against Ireland. I thought she balled out. She added such a different level. Talk about a player that came in and had that buzzy energy that Lynn has as well, but from such a defensive position, like somebody that can break lines against Canada by dribbling, I think is going to be key because Canada's front line is also incredibly talented. We're very familiar with Adriana Leon, Nichelle Prince,
Sonis
Evelyn
can
Viens,
sub in.
Sonis can come in, Evelyn Vian, who you've played with.
Yeah.
They have a lot of talent. So it's going to be a really good juxtaposition from what we saw against Ireland to Canada. But before we go, McCall, give us your prediction for this match. We all kind of hate doing it, but we have to do it. What do you think is going to go down in this Canada versus US match?
I think it's going to be 3-1. We're going to win. US is going to take it. But we're going to be challenged in the back for the first time. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah. I actually agree. I think I'm going to say 2-1. I like the high scoring though. I'm with the high scoring.
I think if we put our best 11 out there and then our next best, say we use 3 subs on our front line also, I mean, we are just pummeling them with defending all game because we have so much attacking talent. So that's why I think we'll definitely get 3 goals.
No, I like that. I feel confident in your prediction. McCall's probably going to be right. Everyone in the chat, let us know what you think. But before we close out the show, fun fact, today was the U.S. Women's National Team's 600th win. 600.
Incredible.
That is absolutely incredible. I wonder where that fares to other national teams.
Yeah.
But don't matter. We got the
We'll do research. We'll get back to y'all.
Yeah. Producer Mark will probably put it in the chat. Shout out to producer Mark. But everybody, that was our show. Such a fun little recap. Can't wait to talk U.S. Women's National Team against Canada in a couple days. Don't forget, Attacking Third will be back Tuesday, July 1st here with Sandra, McCall, and J-Mac. That is a stellar crew for you guys. But thank you all so much for tuning in. Make sure you tune in for the next one. From producer Mark, McCall, I'm Darian. This was Attacking Third.